Imagine a quiet suburban neighborhood where everyone knows each other, and life seems peaceful until one moment shatters that calm. In this story, a relentless HOA officer, known for her strict and often unreasonable enforcement of neighborhood rules, decides to cross a line that no one saw coming. Meet Karen, determined to protect her community, and Mr. Johnson, a black homeowner who's simply living his life. What starts as a routine dispute over property rules quickly escalates when Karen decides to step inside his home without permission. The tension rises immediately as the situation turns personal. You can almost feel the panic, the disbelief, and the fear of what could happen next. But just when Karen thinks she's in control, the scene changes entirely. Unbeknownst to her, Mr. Johnson isn't just an ordinary homeowner. He has family ties that make this situation far from ordinary. His cousin, a local sheriff known for handling difficult situations with authority and fairness, is about to arrive. This story isn't just about a conflict over rules, it's about boundaries, respect, and the shocking consequences when people overstep them. You'll see how assumptions, prejudice, and arrogance collide in real life and how one decision can turn a simple neighborhood dispute into something no one will forget. Stick around, because the moment the sheriff cousin steps in changes everything, and Karen quickly realizes that her actions have far bigger consequences than she ever imagined. The tension is just beginning, and the outcome is about to shock everyone involved. If you want, I can also draft an even punchier hook-filled version, optimized specifically to boost YouTube clicks and retention. Do you want me to do that? Mr. Johnson had lived in the neighborhood for over a decade. He had always tried to keep to himself, maintaining his home and garden with care, attending HOA meetings when necessary, and quietly hoping for a peaceful life. But Karen had a reputation that made neighbors uneasy. Stories of her confrontations, sometimes petty, sometimes aggressive, had circulated for years. She saw herself as the guardian of the community, but many wondered if her sense of authority went too far. On that day, Karen had been particularly agitated. The HOA had sent her a notice about a minor complaint she claimed to have received, and she was convinced Mr. Johnson was deliberately ignoring her warnings. Fueled by frustration and entitlement, she decided she had the right to step inside his home to inspect. What she didn't know was that Mr. Johnson's family background ran deep into law enforcement. His cousin, Sheriff Daniels, was known across the county for his sharp instincts and unwavering presence in tense situations. As Karen pushed the door open, Mr. Johnson tried to remain calm. He didn't want to escalate things, but he couldn't ignore the intrusion. Each step she took inside increased the unease in the room. The walls, normally filled with family photos and a sense of warmth, suddenly felt like a trap. Outside, neighbors began to notice the commotion, whispers spreading through the street. Meanwhile, Sheriff Daniels was already on his way, called earlier by Mr. Johnson just in case things got out of hand. Little did Karen know, her assumption that she controlled the situation was about to be completely upended. Tension hung in the air, and the next few minutes would decide how far this confrontation would go. As Karen stood in the living room, her eyes scanning every corner like she owned the place, Mr. Johnson kept his distance, his voice steady but firm. "You don't have the right to be here," he said, trying to assert control without making the situation explosive. Karen scoffed, brushing off his words as if they were meaningless. She believed she was enforcing the rules, but she had underestimated the personal stakes and the consequences of crossing this line. Outside, the street hummed with quiet tension. Neighbors peeked through curtains, some whispering, some dialing friends for updates. Rumors about HOA disputes were common, but few had ever seen one escalate into something so immediate, so personal. Meanwhile, Sheriff Daniels' cruiser pulled onto the street, lights off but presence unmistakable. He had known Mr. Johnson since childhood and respected him deeply. The sheriff sensed the situation wasn't just a matter of HOA rules, it was about respect, boundaries, and the potential for things to spiral. Inside, Karen began to feel a subtle shift. The confident mask she wore started cracking as she realized the homeowner wasn't intimidated. Mr. Johnson's calm, measured responses contrasted sharply with her growing frustration, making the imbalance of power more evident. At the same time, Karen's own neighbors began murmuring about her reputation, adding a layer of social pressure she hadn't anticipated. Sheriff Daniels' footsteps echoed in the hallway as he entered. Eyes sharp and evaluating, Karen froze, the reality of her missteps settling in. She had thought she was in control, but now multiple perspectives, legal, social, and personnel, were converging, creating a pressure cooker situation that promised to erupt at any moment. The room felt smaller, the tension thicker, and every second stretched as all eyes focused on what would happen next. Sheriff Daniels stepped fully into the house, his presence commanding the room without a word. Karen's confident stance faltered slightly, but she quickly straightened, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm just making sure the rules are followed," she said, trying to regain control, her voice sharper than before. Mr. Johnson stayed calm, his hands visible, a silent statement that he was not a threat, but he was ready to protect his home. The air was thick with tension. Karen's insistence on authority clashed with the reality of the law and the sheriff's calm assessment. Every movement, Every glance felt magnified. The neighbors outside were now more than curious, they were on edge, watching, whispering, some quietly recording the unfolding drama. Every second stretched, and Karen realized that her actions were no longer about HOA regulations, they were about respect, boundaries, and accountability. Sheriff Daniels moved closer, his eyes locked on Karen, speaking with quiet intensity. "You need to step back," he said, the firmness in his voice leaving no room for argument. Karen hesitated, torn between her desire to assert control and the sudden awareness that she was completely outmatched. Her usual tactics of intimidation and manipulation held no weight here. Inside, Mr. Johnson could feel the moment tipping, the tension reaching a boiling point. His heart pounded, not from fear of Karen, but from the anticipation of what could happen if tempers flared. The hallway seemed smaller, the air heavier, as the three of them faced off. Every second brought the situation closer to a breaking point. With neighbors leaning in, Sheriff Daniels steady and unyielding, and Karen, realizing that the line she crossed might have consequences far bigger than she ever imagined. "If you want, I can write the climactic confrontation next, where tensions peak and the story reaches its most intense, suspenseful moment before the resolution." Just as Karen seemed to be gathering herself, ready to argue her way out, a sudden sound from the back of the house made everyone freeze, a door clicking open upstairs. Mr. Johnson's teenage daughter, who had been quietly observing from her room, appeared at the top of the stairs, holding her phone. Her face was a mixture of fear and determination. "Dad, she's recording everything," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. Karen's eyes widened, and for the first time, panic flickered across her face. Her carefully constructed authority was slipping, now exposed not just to Mr. Johnson and the sheriff, but potentially to the entire neighborhood. Sheriff Daniels noticed a shift immediately. He turned his gaze toward Karen, sensing her vulnerability, and spoke with quiet control. "This isn't just about rules anymore. This is about crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed." Suddenly, the tension doubled. Karen, realizing the situation could escalate legally and socially, began pacing, muttering about misunderstandings and overreactions. Meanwhile, whispers grew louder outside the house. Neighbors now fully aware something serious was happening. The camera in the teenager's hand captured every moment, meaning Karen's actions could spread quickly online, adding another layer of pressure. At the same time, Sheriff Daniels noticed something else, an unusual delivery box left at the front porch, one that didn't belong to Mr. Johnson. He stepped toward it cautiously, adding another twist to the unfolding drama. Now, what began as an HOA dispute had turned into a multi-layered conflict, legal, social, and potentially public. Every person in the room was on edge, knowing that any wrong move could ignite a chain reaction, and Karen's arrogance was about to collide with consequences she hadn't anticipated. I can continue next with the final tension build-up, toward the climax, where all elements collide and the audience is left on the edge before the resolution. "Do you want me to do that?" Just as Karen's panic seemed to reach its peak, Sheriff Daniels stepped forward, his voice calm but authoritative. "Karen, you need to leave now," he said, gesturing toward the door. Karen froze, realizing that the power she thought she had was gone. The reality hit her. She had overstepped, and the land common sense were on Mr. Johnson's side. Neighbors watching from their windows gasped, some whispering relief, others shocked at the drama unfolding right in front of their homes. Mr. Johnson, still composed, spoke firmly. "You can't just barge into someone's home. Boundaries matter, and respect matters even more." His daughter lowered her phone, but the recording had already